Star Wars actor Mark Hamill visited the White House on Friday and referred to President Biden as Joby-Wan Kenobi, though I'm not sure how helpful it is to compare Biden to a ghost.
Maybe not helpful, but certainly appropriate. No doubt about that. Joe Biden bumping into furniture again yesterday at the White House. We found out that he thinks he can walk through those pieces of furniture and door frames that he walks into. So he's worked in the past. Well, happy Tuesday to you and welcome. We are, of course, at 888-630-9625. Absolutely toll-free to you, our valued listeners. Wise, well-informed, intelligent, excellent sense of humor. And our beloved listeners. And once again, the Democrats still on the loose. I was talking to my best girl this morning on the couch, and I think I said it out loud. I think I said, well, it'd be kind of tragic if this war in Israel and Gaza ended before the Democratic convention in Chicago, wouldn't it? I think I'm gonna see if I can get Benjamin Netanyahu on the horn and say, hey, let's get him on the shofar. Get him on the shofar. That's the horn. That's the old horn. Get him on the horn and say, I'd hate to see the Democrats clear the decks of this whole hate fest before the Democratic convention in Chicago. I know the jihad is not about to give up. You see, they had this fake, we want a ceasefire. Yeah, as long as they get everything they want because they're the terrorists and they're holding hostages, and no talk of releasing hostages or turning over their war criminal leadership or anything like that. Speaking of which, I have audio that I'm going to share with you today, and it's quite remarkable, I've got to say. The audio is breathtaking. Can you say breathtaking? I think you say this is breathtaking. And the audio is of a phone call from an Israeli Defense Force officer calling a house in the Gaza, which is, like an enemy headquarters. And the IDF soldier reaches a man on the phone, and we have his name, and it's Abu Yunus. And when Abu Yunus is reached, he said, hey, listen, we're about to drop a bomb on in the building you're in because this bank is used as a nerve center for Hamas, which is a genocidal gang of blood-drenched savages, and we're going to have to kill them in the name of humanity. Sometimes you have to do that. It's a terrible thing, but it creates a moral conundrum. But nevertheless, you navigate your way through that, and then you drop the bomb on the SOBs. And the audio recording is quite interesting because the Palestinian, so-called Palestinian man with his family and his children in this house, well, you'll never believe what he says. But the IDF soldier tries to speak some sense, tries to talk some sense into him. And I'll share with you the way that it goes, because this is like know your enemy, all right? And this will be a very helpful tool in getting to know your enemy. And maybe we'll play that song, Getting to Know You. Maybe we'll say, Getting to Know All About You. And then we'll end it with an explosion because the bomb just dropped. But we'll get to that because it was remarkable stuff. My friend Brian sent it this morning and said, hey, look at this. And I was like, wow, that's pretty wild stuff. So I'm going to share that with you because that's what we do here. We share. We enlighten. We inform. Unlike, for example, John Carl at ABC News or Jake Tapper at CNN or George Stephanopoulos also at ABC News. The Democrat Party, their tentacles are everywhere. It's quite creepy. And in New York City last night, have you heard of that? New York City? It's they're not on good times right now. New York City, it's not a high point for New York City. But the gangs of genocidal Democrat, Jew-hating lunatics, mobs of them were in the street yesterday. In fact, I got a video from my sister-in-law who lives in New York City, in New York, and she was out just being a normal person yesterday when the mobs of, and she's Jewish, and she's a nice Jewish woman, and the crazy mobs of Jew-hating loons were storming by her with their chants, and interestingly, it was in German. Yesterday, it was all in German. It wasn't really in German, but it might as well have been. And remarkable things going on in this country, and it's all the Democrat Party. The gender dysphoria, the transgender story hour for little children in kindergarten, that's the Democrat Party, isn't it? Isn't that the Democrat Party, Mike? After school Seton Club, that is the Democrat Party, no doubt about that. Of course, death to Israel, death to America. Oh, they burned another American flag last night in New York, too. Burned it to the ground, but they were hoisting what they call Palestinian flags. Really, that is the symbol of genocide right now, not of the genocide of the Palestinian people, because there's no such thing as that going on. But the Palestinian flag represents it's the Nazi flag of the 21st century. I'm just going to go say it. You're not supposed to, but I don't really care about what you're not supposed to. So it's the Nazi flag of the 21st century, and the Democrats are marching all over the city of New York and in Washington and on college campuses and the Ivy League in particular, and all of this madness. So I've got what happened in New York, because they had the Met Gala last night. It's not just an apple anymore. Now it's a big black tie affair. You remember that, what's her name? AOC went to the Met Gala. Was that last year or maybe a couple years ago? When she showed up in that Smash Capitalism in America dress, like a $10,000 dress that says Smash Capitalism or whatever it said, and AOC. And it's a $75,000 ticket, by the way, if you're going to buy it yourself. But AOC didn't buy her own ticket. She, I wonder what she did for the ticket. What do you think she had to do to get the free pass into the Met Gala? Because she's only got a couple of things that she could offer up, but she went to the thing. And what did that white dress? It was like $10,000 or $15,000 dress. Said something, a big word written on it. The hipsters couldn't be bigger. It turns out that hipster is for hypocrite, and another thing. So, blocked from reaching the Met Gala in NYC. Pro-Palestinian protesters burn American flag, vandalize World War I memorial. It's really time the fire hoses came out for these people. And I think we should find a way to put like that red dye that they use, when you rob a bank. When's the last time you robbed a bank, Michael? Because when you rob a bank, you get the bags, and they have these red exploding dye packs inside of the bank bags. And we need that for these protesters. And they love their tattoos. It'd just be kind of like, and we should make it a dye that never comes off, that there's no way to come off. So it's, you're marked for life. That'd be a good method, I think. I'm going to work on that. I think I could market that, along with the self-immolation Zippo lighters that are in the pipeline. So yeah, Met Gala stepped down a little, but they, because they defund the police, except when it comes time to bar protesters from exercising their First Amendment rights anywhere near the Met Gala. So they keep them as far away as possible, because it's like, Your Majesty, the peasants are revolting. You're telling me they stink on ice. It's, Mel Brooks thing in the History of the World, Part 1. But that's what happened last night at the Met Gala, because they don't want those people anywhere near their fancy $75,000 a ticket affair.
It is said that the people are revolting.
You said it. They stink on ice.
And so the police, now they don't like the police, except when the police are protecting them, because they don't want this rabble around here. They stink on ice. So they kept them away. And that's just a little sample of what will happen at the Chicago Democratic Convention this summer, because they're planning on keeping the rabble that stinks on ice 4 miles away from the convention center. Imagine, like, where you're sitting right now. What's 4 miles away from you? Imagine there's a convention just like a movie theater where you are, convention center going, and you're there, and there are protests, and the police keep the protesters 4 miles away. 4 miles away from here, I'd say, is the White House, right? I think the White House is 4 miles from here. That's a pretty good estimate. And that means we're 4 miles from the White House, and that's a long way off. It takes some time in Washington, D.C. to drive there. And that's how far away they're planning on keeping the protesters at the Chicago convention. Amazing stuff. And then, who is this? The Daily Mail is covering the story, but the Washington Post is not, because they're a filthy, corrupt rag that just attached their lips to the buttocks of the Democrat Party years ago, and the suction will not allow them to separate themselves from the buttocks of the haunches of the Democrat Party. But the Daily Mail is covering the story out of the United Kingdom, and their headline is "Nothing Sacred?" Pro-Palestine protesters. It's a lot of P's in that. The pro-Palestine protesters light American flag on fire outside World War I memorial. It's an outside World War I memorial, but that's okay. As they spray paint Gaza on the base, they vandalized the World War I memorial. They spray painted the word Gaza at least twice that I could see on one side of the base of the World War I memorial. They spray paint Gaza on base and shamelessly add Palestinian flag to display. Remarkable stuff. So I got that. Also, I have a student for you today that I want to share, a young woman who is Jewish and was supposed to be graduating at the graduation ceremony at the Columbia University. That's an Ivy League college in New York. And instead, she's not going to be enjoying her parents after all these years and all this money. There is no marching for her at the graduation at Columbia University, and her parents are told to, go screw themselves by the Ivy Leaguers at Columbia University because they've joined the jihad. Really, the whole board should come out in suicide vests on the stage and maybe detonate, maybe self-immolate. We could send them Zippo lighters if we think, if you believe that it'd help. But this is great because now 13, and the Free Beacon has the story. The Washington Post does not because it's not a newspaper. Democracy died at the Washington Post. Here's the headline at the Free Beacon, the Washington Free Beacon, a great newspaper. Find them on Al Gore's amazing internet if you're not in Washington, D.C. The Free Beacon is wonderful, freebeacon.com. 13 federal judges say they will no longer hire law clerks from Columbia University. From the law school at Columbia University, citing, quote, virulent spread of anti-Semitism, end quote, and, quote, explosion of student disruptions. There is an explosion of student disruptions. They're disrupting. But when do you hear this student, a young woman who is Jewish, who has attended for the last 4 years Columbia University, her dream, her parents' dream, and then, the Democrats, the left, they destroy everything and burn most things to the ground. They are the American Taliban, the Democrat Party. And this New York Times, they're very excited. They're advocates for Hamas. And just as they were advocates for the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union was still murdering millions of people. And they were advocates for the Nazis when the ship, the St. Louis, was headed here and FDR was shooing them away so they could go be exterminated by the Socialist Workers' Party of Adolf Hitler. But here's the New York Times. Hamas's offer to hand over 33 hostages, including some who are dead. I'm sorry, what? So they raped them to death. They skinned them alive. And the savages say, oh, we'll give you back the ones that we've already raped and murdered. And the New York Times like, hey, that's a pretty good deal. That's an opening. We can have a discussion now, right? Because the New York Times is not on the side of civilization. They're on the side of the left, which is on the side of Hamas. And in this hour, I want to share with you this audio recording of an IDF soldier calling a house in the Gaza, telling the people to get out. And they get Dad in charge of his family of 20 future suicide bombers. And wait till you hear what happens with this family. Quite remarkable stuff. And Alvin Bragg in New York, top prosecutor, Matthew Colangelo. And Matthew Colangelo, wait till you hear about this guy, the former Department of Justice, Biden official. And he was sent there to do the bidding of the corrupt Biden White House, it's like living in the Philippines before the Philippines straightened out their act. Amazing stuff. President Trump and the gag order, the judge threatening to put him in jail again. Maxine Waters is out of her cage again. A Democrat running for the Senate in Maryland who likes to spend a lot of his money coming up. We got Kevin Spacey in the news. He's an actor. Marijuana, the Francis Scott Key Bridge, all kinds of Democrat news. 888-630-9625. All right, we're back in a couple of minutes. I'm going to play this audio of a phone call from an IDF soldier to someone in the Gaza being warned to evacuate in order to save the lives of his children. I have that coming up. Right now, let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Tom. Let's go to Tom Radio, calling from Bradenton, Florida. Tom, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Thank you, sir. I called to do two things. I want to thank you for the hard work you do, for the outstanding reporting and just the truth that you constantly tell us. But the other reason for calling is to ask you to use what I think you probably have as considerable influence in the political world in Washington, D.C. You know so many people. You break bread with them. You talk to them. I want you to use that influence to keep Hunter Biden from being indicted. And the reason I say that is because if he and the other members of his crooked family are indicted, certainly the evil one will pardon them. And with that in mind, if he's not indicted, I don't know the law that well, but I don't think he can be pardoned for a crime that he hasn't been accused of. So does that make sense? Can we keep him from being indicted?
Well, I understand what you're saying. And they would play the martyrs and the victims, and the news media would make them into victims, unlike Donald Trump, who's being indicted by every Democrat quack, every George Soros hack in the country for obvious political reasons. And I do think that, I'm not certain either, but I think the president could pardon his son preemptively even before he's charged.
Okay, well, I hope not. I just look forward to having Mr. Trump in there and enforcing laws that are on the books. And there's so much. They're so crooked. The whole Biden enterprise is a crooked enterprise. Yep. Thanks for what you do. I really appreciate you.
Well, God bless, Tom. Thank you very much. You're very kind. And honestly, enforcing the laws on the books, that'd be a novel approach to running a country, wouldn't it? As opposed to what the Democrats are doing, because they're not liberals, they're the left. Well, we have, because of our brilliant listeners out there, and not because I looked it up myself as I was doing something else, but because of our brilliant and helpful listeners, our great American and great American listeners, some of whom are from around the world, and came to America to join this great project of ours and not destroy it like the Democrat Party is doing. But it turns out Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez going to the Metropolitan Gala was 2021. It was 2021. And the $10,000 dress she was wearing, and I was correct just from memory, $10,000 designer dress, and scrawled on the dress in a very haphazard kind of, bloody way, was "Tax the Rich." And then she walked into this place that's $75,000 a ticket, where people are arriving in their limousines with personal security details. And the New York police are keeping the protesters blocks away so they don't have to lay eyes on them. They couldn't be bigger hypocrites if their goal were to become bigger hypocrites. If they had degrees in becoming bigger hypocrites, I'm convinced they could not become bigger hypocrites. And then she turned around and sat down with the ultra wealthy with her "Tax the Rich" dress on, a $10,000 dress. You don't have to make it up, because they do it for you. They do all the work for you. All right, now I'm about to get to the poor, innocent, long-suffering Palestinian man who, before I get to that, I want to get to this, because the Democrats, they've got their fingers in everybody's pies. You know what I mean? And when I say pies, I think you know what I mean. Here's the story from Axios, an extreme far left-wing outlet that does the bidding of the Democratic Party under the guise of doing journalism. The headline is, "Pot patios are firing up in D.C. this summer." I'm sorry, pot patios are firing up in D.C. this summer? Do they need Zippo lighters that are designed specifically for self-immolation? And they write at Axios, who is it? It's Anna Spiegel writing the story. Pot patios are coming to D.C. this summer thanks to the city's evolving cannabis laws. It's the first time D.C. residents will be able to legally smoke or consume marijuana in licensed retailers' outdoors social spaces like rooftops and courtyards. The Alcohol, Beverage, and Cannabis Administration, ABCA, because they have to turn it into an acronym, ABCA, the Alcohol, Beverage, and Cannabis Association, tells Axios that its new summer garden program, part of the 2022 D.C. medical cannabis bill, yeah, you guys all need medical attention, I'll grant you that, is finally getting off the ground. Now, registered D.C. residents and others can buy medical cannabis and products to consume at licensed retailers who have an ABCA-approved summer garden endorsement. Now, I should say, so it's like a liquor license, right? But it's for pot, and you're going to have rooftops and patios, and I assume that you might also have a restaurant that has food, and because, you know, when you get stoned, you might want to order some food, order a chili fries or something. I'm craving a half smoke. So you get your license from the ABCA for the summer garden program, and then the operating hours between 8 a.m. and midnight, but not before 8 a.m. and not after midnight. No live entertainment permitted. So that makes as much sense as everything else they do, right? No, with no live music, but retailers can play ambient music. Can they play it loudly? The D.C. government is mentally impaired. It's run by people who are like Trayon White, who is, a D.C. city councilman who thinks that the Rothschilds make it snow in Washington, D.C. because they're trying to take over the city, and that's the best way to do it. So 8 a.m. and midnight, you get your license. Now, everywhere you go in D.C., it smells like pot, pretty much. Pretty much everywhere you go, it smells like pot. Any walking around, driving around, wherever you go in D.C., it smells like pot because they kind of legalize pot, but they're so stupid that they did it wrong, you know. And now it's crazy because what they did is they said you can give pot away as a gift, but you cannot accept money in exchange for pot, all right? So stores open up all over D.C. where you can buy a $500 T-shirt and then you get a gift of an ounce of marijuana with an approximate value of $500, right? And some places you go, you buy an art print and you can get a little one for $100 and then get a quarter ounce of pot, and you get a big art print for $500, then you get an ounce of pot. And I'm ballparking this, but that's about right. And I've actually witnessed this in Georgetown, there are places that just ignore that, and you walk in and just buy pot over the counter, even though it's not legal. It's also not legal to smoke pot outside or while you're driving your car, but everybody in the city is smoking pot outside and while driving in their car. And now they've got you can have a license at your establishment, but you can't have live music. That makes sense to them because, well, you don't want it'd be like Woodstock everywhere you go. It'd be a live music fest and everybody's smoking pot. You can't have that. So just play music on the radio, bring your CD player and play the music from 8 a.m. to midnight, but not 7:30 a.m. and not 12:15, not shortly after midnight so retailers can't serve alcoholic beverages, but they can serve non-alcoholic drinks and food in the summer garden. All right? Now, and that makes sense, right? So it's kind of like the opium den concept, but they know people get the munchies, so you got to be able to sell stuff to eat. Additionally, retailers can apply, listen to this, for an education tasting endorsement that allows businesses to offer cooking, and how-to classes plus tastings. Tastings of what? You're a D.C. government. This is what Democrats do. All right, now the Democrats love Hamas. They're big fans of Hamas, and they don't like civilization. They don't like the United States of America. They don't like the American flag. They burned it again last night in New York. That's what they do. Whenever Democrats are buying an American flag, they're usually getting a can of gas with it because their plan is to burn it, not fly it in front of their house or somebody else's house or anywhere they might go. Now, let me go to this audio recording. As I mentioned earlier, it is an IDF soldier. That's the Israeli Defense Force. And going only by the name Ramy, R-A-M-Y, Ramy. And he doesn't want to use his whole name because the terrorists will come and kidnap and rape and murder his family because they're savages from a medieval hell that need to be bombed forward to the Stone Age. And Ramy, the IDF officer, he got on the phone and he called Abu Yunus. And Abu Yunus is an alleged civilian in Gaza, and there are Arab news outlets putting this audio out there. The Israelis, I think the Israelis put it out there. Maybe Abu Yunus put it out there. But Ramy of the IDF called Abu Yunus to warn him that the building he is in, where there is a bank involved in nefarious activities, is about to have a bomb dropped on it. So they called him on the phone, said, hey, ring, 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 ring. I'm putting my thumb in my ear and my left pinky down by my mouth like I'm talking on the phone. Hey, ring, ring. Hey, Abu Yunus. Hey, it's Ramy. Listen, we're about to drop a big-ass laser-guided bomb on your house, and it's going to blow up real big. And I want to give you a heads up so that you guys can evacuate. It's the facility that we need to hit because it's it's an enemy location, and we want to get you guys out of there. Make sure that we save your wives and your children's. And how many wives does Abu Yunus have? Well, we don't really know right now. But today, probably none, because I'll explain what happens. So here is the audio recording, and Ramy begins by saying, the blast radius will be immense. He's got him on the phone. The blast radius will be immense, and it will put your life at risk. You need to evacuate the building with your family and move half a kilometer away, all right? How many are you? How many people live in your apartment? We're a big family, he says. We're a big family. All of them must evacuate, Ramy says. How many people are there? Abu says, each family has around 20 people. How many families are there? Three families, says Abu. Ramy says, okay, inform everyone that we'll wait until everyone evacuates, but we don't have much time left. Okay, Abu Yunus? And Abu Yunus says, we're far away from the bank. Ramy says, listen to me. This is dangerous. You all need to evacuate the building and move away a half a kilometer. Everyone, including the elderly and children, the blast radius will be immense, he says. Abu Yunus, he responds, my dear, I'm unable to evacuate everyone. I need a minimum of 2 hours before I can evacuate them all. 2 hours. And Ramy says, brother, we will proceed with the strike regardless of whether you leave or not. Abu says, strike us then. Do as you please. Do whatever you want. Ramy says, we must do everything within our means to prevent any fatalities. Abu says, listen to this now, Key. Abu says, we want to die. Ramy says, you're responsible for ensuring the safety of the children. Says you're responsible. He says, and our children also must die. What? I'm sorry. What are you saying, Abu Yunus? We want to die and our children also must die? Well, then just send a check to Planned Parenthood. Do it. And Rami, the IDF soldier, says, no, God forbid. You want to become a martyr? Is that it? And Abu Yunus says, indeed. So we can expose your brutality to the world. May Allah curse you. I'm shaking my fist in the air because I figure Abu Yunus is shaking his fist in the air. Maybe he's waving his AK-47 in the air and pointing to his suicide vest and telling the kids, hey, you can grow up to be just like me. Suicidal, homicidal, genocidal lunatic drenched in the blood of innocents because death to the Jews, just like the Democrats are chanting here in America. He says, so Rami says, oh, no, God forbid, you want to become a martyr? Is that it? Indeed, so we can expose your brutality to the world. May Allah curse you. Your actions will lead to consequences. Proceed as you desire. Rami says, Abu Yunus. And Abu Yunus cuts him off. Don't try to convince me. I won't leave. Go ahead and strike the bank. Our homes or any locations you want. Do whatever you want. And Rami of the IDF says, Abu Yunus, you want the children to die? And he sounds incredulous at this. And Abu Yunus, who's a Muslim man and a Palestinian, says, if you wish to spare the children, refrain from striking the bank. He seems to really care about this bank very much. Why would you strike the bank in the first place? It's just a bunch of walls. But I'm thinking that Abu Yunus knows better than that, right? This is not up to me to decide, Abu Yunus. I'm being honest with you. It's not up to me. What's up to me is to warn you. I want you and your children to live in peace. And Abu says, we don't want the peace that comes from you. We don't want the peace. We want to die. We want our children to die. We don't want the peace that comes from you, right? This goes back to, who was it? You know, that wonderful Israeli leader, I believe it was Golda Meir, after being attacked by the grandfathers of these Muslim killers, said, we can forgive you for killing our children, but we will never forgive you for making our children kill your children. An extraordinary line from a world leader. But here they are, the savages live on from generation to generation, and they say there's a genocide going on. They're like twice as many Palestinians today as there were 40 years ago. That's not a very effective genocide. Jewish people seem to be pretty good at most things. I think if they wanted to carry out a genocide, they'd know how. But that's not what's happening. The Democrats are chanting that anyway. We don't want the peace that comes from you. Rami says, if you remain in the building, it will be considered suicide, which is haram. That's, your Quran forbids it. That's haram. You hear him saying it right there. The Quran, anything that is haram is forbidden, like eating bacon, haram, and committing suicide. Your Quran forbids it. And Abu says, the Quran? You know the Quran? You are cursed in the Quran anyway, because he's a Jew, and the Jews were long before the Quran was ever ginned up. So he said, do whatever you want, my dear, he says. Everyone wants to die from our side. We love death the way you love life. Now that's the Al-Qaeda saying, and the Democrat Party saying too. We don't want the kindness that comes from you. Notify your leaders at the IDF that Abu Yunus refuses to evacuate the building. Do as you please. Rami says, fine then, I will let them know. And then they were martyr. And then next year, the surviving mothers and grandmothers will be sitting on a porch talking about how, oh, my son Abu Yunus, he was martyred in 2024. And my son Muhammad, he was martyred in 2021. And my nephew Karbam, he was martyred in 2019. And then they look at each other and say, oh, they blow up so soon. They blow up so soon. Hey, we tried to save your life, but you want to die. You want your children to die. You want to be martyrs. You don't want peace that comes from peacemakers. Those would be the Israelis next door. This is the enemy that civilization faces. This is why we must stand with Israel. And Joe Biden announced yesterday they're cutting off the delivery of GPS-guided munitions that were en route to Israel so they could defend civilization. But the left isn't on the side of civilization either. Well, that audio that I shared with you is about the enemy that civilization faces. It's about radical Islam, a homicidal, genocidal, suicidal death cult that can't wait for their own children to be killed because it'll help them make a point, around the dinner table. Not the brightest bunch of savages that you've ever run into, but just remarkable stuff. I've got a lot coming up for you, and that includes the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, who is a racist, and she posted a video about the poor children of New York City and the things they don't have. Now, she doesn't know what she's talking about, but that doesn't matter. At least she's a racist. So we've got that coming up, and that's what the Democrats do. It's kind of like, Abu Yunus in the Gaza. The children, the Democrats talk a lot about children. They talk a lot about a lot of things that they use the words, but they don't know what they mean. Oh, care very deeply about two things: children and complete funding for Planned Parenthood. More funding and no limits whatsoever. So I've got those coming up, and back to your calls as well. Just ahead.